Welcome everyone to another session of uLaw webinar at 2 p.m. Praveen is unavailable today, but this is Dams. I will take on and walk you through this presentation. We'll also have a live demonstration of the product as we talk, showcasing you why it is important, what is business reporting. As always, there's an agenda. The agenda is, what are reports like? We have, I know we say about 30 reports, but we have closer to 3,000 what we call insights inside uLaw. And we see that average users, as they keep using uLaw more and more, the insights get bigger and bigger. These are insights in contact, matter, accounting, calendar, and then we'll also talk about the question mark icon, and we'll talk about the new feature of notification, and we'll kind of highlight to you why this is very important, why uLaw reports are important. Now, you as a user, by using uLaw daily, give us a lot of data, the very valuable data, which is basically you're doing this for compliance, you're doing this for managing your accounting, and you're doing this to make your practice very efficient. The beauty is using business reports, we can turn the table back for you. We can tell you things that you might have not very obviously seen in your business. That's the beauty of the product. That's the beauty of business reporting. Business reporting is a very expensive entity in software. People charge several hundreds of thousands of dollars to analyze businesses and give you that insight. But what we have done is we've packaged it right into the software. I mean, at the end of the day, this is your data. What use is it that if you give all this data and we are not able to report to you something very powerful that powerful machine algorithms and artificial intelligence algorithms are able to detect, right? At the end of the day, we want to feed all this data back to you and then provide you with that information so that you, as the business owner, as the legal professional, can take that smart decision and decide for yourself how I want to course correct it or be happy about what you're actually seeing. So what we'll do is we'll get into individually each of these reports. My chat window is open, so I'll be more than happy to entertain questions there. Like if you have any questions, just shoot them my way. I'll try and answer them on the process. We can keep it very interactive over the chat. So first of all, contact reports. Right inside the software, when you log in, we make it very easy for you to get reports. All reports are very obviously visible. Like, for example, all the compliance reports for contacts are right here. So you can just click here and these are the compliance reports that you can download. Like, for example, client FIBO, source of contact, aging. And they're also obviously under document generation. Okay. Now, reports also appear like this, like, for example, in terms of notification telling you like, hey, word of mouth was doing very well for you for the past 90 days. Maybe you should invest more time on it or something like that. Like maybe you did Google advertising. It'll tell you that. So in our software, our intent is to keep reports right front and center. You just click on compliance, you click on source of contact, then I'm just going to do a quick yearly and just download, and the report should be there for you so that you can consume it. Reports, generally we develop them as PDFs so that what you can do is you can consume them, you can kind of think about it. So let's look at this source of contact report. What is this report? This report is actually a Law Society mandatory report. The Law Society wants you to track on a regular basis where is your source of clients are. In this case, we are telling you that family is about 20%, Google is about 7%, word of mouth is about 11%. We give you that whole statistics. Not only do we give you statistics, we also kind of sort it and tell you what is actually doing the best. One line item that you need to pay very high attention on is non-categorized. If 31% of your data is not categorized, the auditor is going to ask you, why are you not tracking your clients? If you look at the code of conduct, one of the things that they want you to do is to track where you're getting your clients from, so that way you can invest on yourself. So that's why we bring it right into the compliance report right here. So under the compliance button, if you just click on it, you can see the source of contact report, right? Another report that we bring here is aging. You can choose a client and then decide to do aging on it. You can just click on the aging and hit the download button. So what this report will do is it'll basically look at all the matters for this person and tell when was the last date of transactions, how much is the outstanding, and what has been happening in this case. In this case, this client, Ryan Peters, is a very good client because he owes you no dollars, and it tells you when, you acted on him and everything like that. Okay. Now, anytime you open a report, I'm going to redo that, like for example, aging or source of contact, we always provide you the small button here called Insights. What is Insights? Insights is basically, these are very strong, powerful AI algorithms that go through your data and they kind of see things that you wouldn't have seen very obviously. Like for example, it tells you like, hey, it's 384 days that this client, has owes you something or something like that. So, and you can actually click on the question answer format. And as you see here, just on this particular contact, the AI algorithm has actually picked 19 useful information. Now, some of them may be useful, some of them may not be useful, but overall, use it to your benefit, right? Like it kind of does very smart analytics. It kind of looks at the data and then tries to synthesize useful information for you that you can actually take and perceive. So always, there are several ways to consume reports. Now, the most obvious ones are the ones that we laid off for you in terms of tabular format, where we tell you, what was what and how much, the guy owes and all stuff like that. Sometimes we like to present that data to you in a pie chart, as you saw in the source of contact. We kind of, put a very nice pie chart to kind of tell you like, hey, this is how, we kind of see, the distribution, right? Now, sometimes we like to show it to you as insights, as you saw. And sometimes we also like to show it to you as notifications. The idea is the data exists. We have computed this for you using some powerful algorithms, and we want to get it in front of you. So under any screen, if you would click the document generation icon, that's where you would find all the reports. We saw now the client fee aging report. We saw the source of contact. Let's look at the client fee book report. Client fee book report is also a very interesting report. What it does is it breaks down, the entire client for you into various matters and tells you how much has he paid. Like for example, this matter, RP 6120, he owes you $2,080 for a pretty long time. This one, he owes you $565. And it sums it up and says, hey, totally, just from this guy, you need to collect this much. Now, that's exactly what the aging report was telling you. That's exactly what other reports could tell you, but every report has a purpose and how it delivers the content. And in this one, we kind of split it by matter, sum it up by client. So that's how I would look at this report. So anything that you do under contacts, you always want to have two views of it. One is breaking down the information from matter perspective, and then adding it up, from an overall client relationship perspective. So as you saw here, the source of contact was the first report. Client fee book, we already showcased that to you. We showcased you aging. Let's look at the contact listing. So that's also another report. Sometimes you may want to file a few things, so you can actually have a list of contact, right? And I can just go by my clients and you can submit. Now, this is also an audit requirement. So when somebody comes, when a law society auditor will come to you for an audit, the first thing he'll ask you is, hey, do you have your list of clients? And this report, basically the list of clients, will actually take all your clients, summarize it for you, and it'll give you an overall view for your auditor that you can just give it to him and say, hey, this is my client list. And you can even go through the list by dates. You can go through them by logical order. You can sort it by last name, first name, so that the auditor can actually go through that. So that's why we bring all those important ones into the compliance, and the other ones that you can actually go through, they're all sitting here where you can kind of view them. Okay, so there's a report section that you will see under every of the tab that you can actually use it. The last one that I want to showcase here is the invoice list. The invoice list is basically what it does is it showcases the list of invoices that you've raised for this client. There's always a question like, hey, what are some of the invoices I raised for this client? What's the balance? Yeah, and how can I kind of get that information? And this invoice list basically brings that up. So for Ryan Peters, as you see here, the date of the invoice, when it was created, who's the client, of course, in this case, it's Ryan, what's the matter, what's the file number, and the invoice number. Because sometimes you just want to know, I remember this client, but I don't know the invoices. This kind of collates the whole thing. As we are talking about, obviously, this is a demo account. We have thousands of, actually 1,000+ clients here. So it took some time to generate the contact list. But as you see here, this is a Law Society requirement report where we have all the information about the client. We basically list it so that you can showcase this to your auditor whenever he comes. So again, under document generation, we have a fee book, which we talked about. This is to quickly give you a view to see how much the guy needs to pay you. Source of contact, Law Society compliance report. List of contacts, Law Society compliance report. Aging is again to analyze and see how the guy owes you. And finally, we talked about invoice list, because if you want to search invoices, this report can be of great use. Okay. Let's move on to our next interesting topic, which is matter reports. Now, matter reports are pretty interesting because, they kind of give you, they zone in now. Now, from the client level, you're now zoned in down into matter level. At matter level, there can be timelines, there can be statement of activities, there's analytics, there could be accounting analytics, and a bill of cost, just to kind of see where things are. So let me now quickly get into the matter section. And I'm going to pick a good one. Let me go back to the Ryan's matter. Hopefully, let me pick a matter where there's a lot of activity that has been done. That looks like a good matter. Yeah, it has a few invoices. That one should be a good one. So let's now, download some reports and see how they look like. So when I click here under reports, the first one is timeline. So you can do a matter timeline, and this is an interesting one. This one tells you in time when you got the retainer, when did you do the application fee, the consultation fee, when were the invoices raised, and all that stuff. Now, because these are demo accounts, everything seems to be on the same day. But, if there were other matters where, you would have, if it's a real life scenario where you've done things at different time, you would have seen a nice timeline view of how things happen for this matter. It's a beautiful report. It just kind of gives you this overall picture of, when you started working on this matter, when did you end it, and what are all the dockets. So again, I'll show you. It's under document generation, under timeline. It gives you the matter. Let's look at accounting timeline. Now, that's an interesting one. So this one is basically, it gives you how trust and general were actually flowing in this matter. As you see here, the trust balance started on 2015. And then, a lot of stuff happened, and it flew through that. It kind of gives you that view. And you can kind of, narrow down your window using this tool here. And you can actually analyze and synthesize and say, hey, how my general was there, how my trust was there. And, each of these events that happen are also highlighted here, so what happened at what time, right? And it gives you all your accounting touch points. So what you saw first was your docket view, right? When you went into timeline, this is your docket view, right? That this is what it happened in terms of dockets and invoices, while this one is your accounting view. It just gives you a view of how, your accounting touch actually happened. Now, all this data is not new. If I just click on the general tab here, right, it's going to give that to me in seconds. It's going to tell me hey, what happened here was hey, you did this trust transfer at this point. This is when you raised your legal fee. Now, this matter for some reason has exactly the same days. Let's try a few matters where maybe I'll get a lot of varying information. Let's see. Generally, because these are, demo accounts, we may not get good data. But, if you have uLaw in front of you, I strongly encourage that you kind of go through this exercise alongside with me so that, you can kind of see, this for yourself. And, you'll see how much you can benefit by some of these reports. And it may actually reveal you something very interesting that you didn't know about your matter. Anyway, I looked around for other matters. I did not find anything, as variant as this matter. So let's stick to this matter. So we looked at the timeline. The next one is legal aid report. Now, there are several videos that we have made on legal aid. Legal aid billing is complicated, basically because you're giving them time values and then sending you an invoice. You need to send them an invoice with time value. Then they will pay for some portion. They may not pay for some portion. What this legal aid report does is it takes all the data that you have, and you can basically choose a date range, or you can choose all date, and you can download this report. Now, what we do is in this report, it's not an invoice, but we try to keep our compliance as close as possible to what legal aid is actually expecting. And if you actually uploaded your signature, we even print it so that way you can just send it to legal aid and try and get yourself paid. So you don't have to actually raise an invoice. You can just send this report and get paid, and then after that you can decide stuff. Okay. Now, what we have also done is all the statements, trust, general, settlements, summaries, accounts. The most important one that I love is the settlement statements, right? You can just download a settlement statement. Now, settlement statement is very useful to explain to your client what happened, but it's very useful to you too, because by just reading on this settlement statement, you'll understand so much about this matter. It'll tell you all the services that you rendered, all the disbursements that you conducted for this matter. It will summarize retainers for you. It will summarize other trust funds that came in and went out. It will summarize legal fees for you with HST or GST or PST, whichever province you are. It will summarize disbursements for you. It will summarize discounts for you. And then the most important, it will summarize trust transfers for you. And then what it does is at the end of the report, it gives you a view of what happened, like how much money came in, what happened, how did it go, how did the funds get transferred, and finally gives you a view what's the invoice balance. So it's a great report. You can really use it to send it to your client, but it's also useful for you as well. We use it a lot at our support calls. If somebody calls us and says, hey, this matter, something is wrong, we generally ask them to say, hey, can you just, click on document generation, go to statements, and give us the settlement plus account statement. And that one statement can give the life history of the matter so we can understand. So if we at support can use this, you can only imagine how useful this report is to you, because this is your data at the end of the day, right? So moving on, there are other useful reports in terms of timesheets. You can do a matter timesheet. Now this is very useful, especially if you are multi lawyer firm. There are several lawyers working. This single report will tell you who worked on what, how much did they estimate, how much did they bill. For example, they only estimated 30 minutes, or but they billed 1 hour and 12 minutes. It kind of gives you all those summarized views, and then at the end of the day, it'll summarize and say, hey, total estimated hours was 3 hours and 30 minutes, but you actually billed 4 hours and 12 minutes. Now, this one is on the other side. Generally, I know in your legal profession, you turn out on the other side. You might have worked for a few hours, but you're only billing the client for lesser. So this report will actually help you understand, how much pro bono that you've actually done for this client. Okay. Finally, this one also has the entire matter report. So what we did is we kind of provide to you as insights, where you can just click on the insights and it'll load it up, and you'll see that every matter, the AI is so smart, it can pull out so much analytics. On this matter alone, it brought out about 34 different questions. It brought the age of the matter, there was no activity and this matter is like, not closed yet, it can highlight that fact. Like, it gives you so many analytics that you wouldn't have even thought about. Like, it gives you like every invoice that was raised, when was it raised, when was it paid, like, how was the offset, how much, what's the trust balance. Now, if the matter is a good matter, right, like where you made the money and all that stuff, you're not going to get very useful insights, right? But let's say this was a matter where you did not benefit much and you want to explain this to your client, analytics can be of great help. You can say, hey, look at this. I've been working on this matter for so many days and I've done so much stuff for you, and and I'm really not benefiting. You could get all these insights that we have picked up and you can actually relate to your client, and that's our job, in the reports. Okay. On top of it, like, we also provide to you some leads exposed. So, if you are dealing with the companies that are that want your export of a matter in leads format, now uLaw supports leads. So, you can actually go here, export your matter as leads, and then you can actually send it to the leads provider so that they can import and you can get paid. Okay. So now going back, I think we've covered most of it. We looked at timeline reports, we looked at legal aid, we looked at different analytics, we looked at timesheets, accounting level analytics. We haven't looked at bill of cost and statement of activity. Let me come to that. Now, sometimes the client might demand from you a statement of activity or bill of cost, right? Like, this is not an invoice. It's more like, how much did it cost for him for the entire matter. Bill of cost is a beautiful report that basically lays out in great detail just the revenue portion. It'll tell you like, hey, these are all the invoices that we raised, and these are all the disbursements that we paid, and these are all the discounts that we gave you. So it kind of summarizes for him a very beautiful way what happened in this matter in terms of revenue, so that you can send this report actually to your client. Similar to bill of cost, there's another report called the statement of activity. Statement of activity does not give him the revenue portion. It just gives the same information, but in time. It says like, hey, when did you work for it? How much are the actual hours and how much did you actually bill for? Okay, so that kind of like, it's a statement of activity report. You can use this prior to actually billing. Like, you can just say, hey, this is my planned billing. What do you think? Like, if you see that the client can be a little bit tough one to handle, this is another way by which you can handle. Like, I recommend some of our clients to actually use statement of activity as a way by which you kind of tell them that this is the bill that you are going to get, expect that. Okay. Let's move on. So we talked about client reports, we talked about matter reports. Now let's move on to accounting reports. This is the bread and butter, right, of the whole thing. uLaw is not just a practice management software. You just don't come here to tell you like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, put your dockets. At the end of the day, accounting is what that drives health of the business. The Law Society clearly knows that. And that's why they've laid out very stringent rules in Bylaw 9 to help you manage your business and also keep compliance. If your software does not do legal accounting, it's pretty much useless. Like, it does not carry a lot of weightage. Yes, it can have all the bells and whistles of telling you like, oh, bill him, do this. But at the end of the day, you do all this work, and if you don't have a strong backing with legal accounting, you need to redo all that stuff anyways. Like, you need to pick a software like QuickBooks or FreshBooks or Xero, and you need to redo everything. A good legal accounting software, what it'll do is when it does practice management, like, making sure that you docket and making sure it reminds you to do stuff, like provide you with the mobility and all that stuff, will balance it on the bottom and back it up with very strong accounting data. Okay. And the fundamentals of accounting obviously start with one process called the reconciliation. So you need to perform reconciliation before you download accounting reports. There's no point in downloading accounting reports if reconciliation is not performed. Why is reconciliation important? Because reconciliation is the one that will highlight you errors. There could be trust errors, there could be general errors, there could be banking errors, there could be taxation errors that you could have committed in that month. So that's why the Law Society expects you to perform reconciliation on a monthly basis, be compliant. There's no like client reports and matter reports, you can download them, have a look at it, and you can understand stuff. But accounting reports, the numbers are not very meaningful, and in fact, they could even be misleading and incorrect if you don't do reconciliation. So we strongly encourage that you pay very strong attention to reconciliation, and that's how we are even. It's a funny story. Like, that's how even our sales team sells uLaw, right? Like, if anybody comes, we first ask them, hey, in your previous software, whatever you were using, can you give us your reconciliation report? And if they give us like a blank stare, then we know, oh my God, we have to spend a lot of time with this client to even intake him into uLaw, right? To get him compliant. And generally, we get a lot of clients during audit, like, they will be like 30, 40 days away from an audit, and they'll realize, I don't have a lot of accounting reports. And the reason why they don't have accounting reports is because they've not been practicing reconciliation. So reconciliation is very fundamental. Like, when I always tell people, like, take reconciliation very seriously. That single report alone can point out to you closer to 20 to 30 accounting touch points, which are very obvious. It'll tell you client trust balance. It'll tell you which ones are active, which matters are so-so, but your funds. It'll tell you all your errors. It'll tell you your bank balance. That one report by itself, like, if you spend like 5-10 minutes on it, looking at it after you've finished your reconciliation, you'll gain a lot of insights. But once you've done reconciliation, that's where all these reports start really making sense, because now you've done reconciliation. The data in uLaw is really pure. If the data in uLaw is really pure, the accounting reports will be of great help. Let's look at some of the reports. First one, most important, is compliance, right? In compliance, it's basically like, let me go into accounting, and then let me click on compliance. In compliance, the most important one is your trust and general reconciliation. Once you've finished your trust and general reconciliation, right, and if you have multiple trust accounts, you need to reconcile all of them, then you need to download Form 9A, right? That's another report. Then there are other beautiful reports like expense book, fee book, intermatter trust transfers, your journals, and your ledgers. Okay, so let's look at some of them and then examine what value they can be, and then take it from there. Okay, I'm going to look at first one, the one. I'm not going to walk through reconciliation report, like, most people understand that because it's a pretty well explained one in the bylaw 9 itself. Or if you're from British Columbia, the Law Society of British Columbia lays out the reconciliation report, and you'll see how you can pick up all your business reporting from there. But let's look at fee book. It's a beautiful report. You can do insights, but I'm going to do a quarterly download. Let's see what I get. While this report is coming, I'll also do an expense report, and I'll do a quarterly, and I'll do a download. The reason why I'm doing both fee book and expense book together is because you really need to examine them side by side, right? Like, because one is looking at money coming in, the fee book, and the expense is actually looking at money going out, right? And money coming in, you has to be divided into fees, HST, because this is not your money, right? This needs to go to the company, to the government. So at the end of the day, when you actually look at your fee book and summarize, in this quarter, right, 69,000 belongs to you, but these don't belong to you. You know that you owe the government this much. I mean, we do a lot of demos on this account. That's why, just in a quarter, this account has made $69,000, but but you kind of get the point, right? Like, and then we also do analytics. It kind of gives you a view. How was your law practice? Tells you like, hey, accident benefits took 7.52%. Criminal law did very well. Small claims is okay. The revenue from accidents, all the revenue from disbursements, like, is about 30%. Kind of gives you like a view of how your money that came into the business looked like, right? Like, you kind of know, oh, where is my serious investments, right? Now, obviously, a pie chart would look horrible if you put every granular stuff. So anything in a very small range, we sum it up as others, but then, we give tabular data right below it, right? Like, so you can look at, contracts, wills and estate, litigation, how much money you made on each of those areas. We kind of divvy it up and give it to you very well. Okay. We also put this in a beautiful bar chart. So if you like bar charts more than pie charts, like, and then what I really like about the fee book is this last portion where we break it by each client, and we tell you like, hey, Henry Knight, this is the total that you got from him. Bradley Ferguson, how much money you got from him. Very beautiful report. This is a Law Society compliant report, by the way. We've added a lot of section to it. The first portion that you see here, only this much is Law Society compliant. It stops off here, but we actually enhanced it. And it's funny. We even have an official feedback on one of our feedback site where a Law Society auditor looked at our fee book, and he was impressed that beyond what the Law Society actually has, how much uLaw has given insight to a lawyer to make sense of it. Okay, so that's the beauty of the data that you give to us. I really love this pie chart because, sometimes you look at the revenue and say, oh my God, I made $79,000. That's awesome, but it's not true. 30% of it was just expenses, right? Like it was revenue that was made on the expenses that you actually made. So kind of gives you like, hey, only 67% of that 69,000 is actually revenue. That kind of sets your view much better. So that's what this report is supposed to do. Let's quickly jump into the expense side. This is not a Law Society mandatory report, but we laid it out exactly like fee book. The reason why we wanted to do that is keep it very consistent to your eyes, right? We wanted to show you how a fee book looked like. You should also know how an expense book should look like. Again, it's the same thing. Like at the end of the day, you understand expenses far better with this, and you see, oh, okay, this is where all the money went. As you see here, that 29,000, that basically that percentage of disbursements was actually the expenses that actually you spent on disbursements. So kind of gives you that feeling, with respect to the numbers. That's why I like to put expense book and fee book right next to each other. Okay. Other reports are pretty obvious: trust ledgers, general ledgers, the journals. Like these are Law Society compliant reports. There's nothing special that we're doing here other than just making sure that the Law Society reports are met. I actually like the ETR report. Sometimes you forget Form 9As. What we have done in uLaw, and we're extremely proud of that, is if you kind of give us all the information about your banking and all that information, we even take your signature and put it here. So that way, at one shot, you have all your Form 9As. All your Form 9As, we just bring it so everything is filled in with your signature. You don't have to do literally anything, So we brought that into the compliance. And if you actually upload your signature, which is actually here under the help panel, right? That's where you can actually upload your signature. Let me bring that here. As you see here, personalize your signature. If you actually load your signature, your logo and your banner, we'll actually put it right there so that it'll be all personalized. Okay, so looking back, we've looked at the journals, we've looked at the ledgers, the expense book. Let's now look at some of smart accounting reports. Okay, let's look at balance sheet. Okay, and then in balance sheet there are so many. Like there's detail, category, and I love date range. Date range is like, let's say I take this quarter, right? So the July to the previous quarter that just ended, and I want to compare it with my previous quarter. You would always use for what we call the date range feature. And we have that date range feature everywhere. We have it in balance sheet. We have it in trial balance. We have it in revenue. We have it everywhere, right? Let me pull what the date range is. What date range does is it kind of looks at every that quarter that you gave, right? This is the quarter that ended on July 1st, and this is the quarter that ended on September 30th, and it compares that. It tells you hey, look at that, in and out. So at the end of the day, trust was similar. How did the general look? How is the cash balance? How did each and every area look between them? It kind of gives you that factor of difference between that, how that account changed, at this period and at this period. So on 1st of July, what it was, and on 30th of September, what it was. It kind of gives you that feeling. Very useful when you do balance sheets, trial balance, to kind of give that feeling of where you are. What I really like is the last page where it tells me, hey, my assets changed this much, my liabilities changed this much, my capital and my revenue changed this much, my expenses, and my profit, from 430 1,000, it went up to this much, right? So it kind of gives you that view. So that's the beauty of balance sheet. In 1 second, you know where your company stands. Like, you know exactly for this period, right now, where do I stand? Like, that. Now, there are other reports, like for the similar thing I could have done with trial balance. Like, I could have done like a quarterly date range. Now, trial balance, like, it's like a snapshot. Balance sheet is cumulative. Trial balance is like a snapshot. It'll give you similar information that you can derive and say, hey, what happened? Again, it beautifully compares, each account for its debits and credits. So, it kind of explains to you. It's a little bit more an accounting detailed report, like, but it gets into the details of where things stand. Okay. Now, under reports, right, we also looked at revenue reports, like, P&L, profit and loss. Let's compare that over the date range. Let's see how that looked like. Now, profit and losses, it takes revenues and expenses and does the comparison, right? So this one, it tells you like, hey, how was the income during that period of time under every area? Like, for example, family law in the previous quarter, you made 2,800, but this quarter you made only 1,000. So it gives you that comparison. And similarly, in the expense, it tells you like, hey, printing, you did worse this quarter than this. Maybe you had more to print, like, meals, not less, probably because of COVID, you didn't travel, right, to eat outside. So, so it gives you that view of how things were last quarter and then now, and it overall projects, the profitability and how much it has changed. So as you see here, last quarter, the profitability was low, but this quarter, the profitability, again, is high. So it kind of gives you that quick view of comparison. Like, and in accounting or anything like that, comparing is very important, because comparing is what that tells you where you're headed to, like how better you're doing, right? So that's the beauty of these reports. Now, there are other reports, like, for example, borrowing reports. There's also analytics, like, and this is another beautiful thing. Like, you can take accounting, for example, and you can look at, some categories and analyze them. Now, as I told you, like, you don't have to have data always presented to you, in tabular, right? We also go ahead and find data in other formats, right? So, like, for example, this is tabular. This is what I was downloading for you. We can show that in a bar graph, or we can show it to you in a pie chart, right? Like Henry, Crazy Jackson, how much you got from each, and you can just, blow it up. You can look at it in tabular, bar, or pie, right? So this one just expands it for you. Okay. So I just show you by fee book by clients, but you could also look fee book by category, right? And you could just hit the go, and it's going to bring out the fee book by category, right? And then you can look at it in a bar chart, right? And it'll tell you who, like, criminal. It's exactly the data that we saw before. It just shows it to you in a different way, or it shows you in a pie chart. Okay. So again, let me quickly summarize under reports. Like, we have analytics, borrowing reports, expense, fee book. Under other, we saw so many reports. There's like a discount report. I already showed you the Form 9A invoice list. Like, this is how you would search invoices, right? Like, it's report on capitals. So let's say you're doing drawings from your company. That's how you are getting paid as a sole practitioner or a small size firm. You can do a drawings report. There's a method of payment report. Like, let's say you're searching for that very particular check. Let's do that. Like, I like that one, because, like, let's say you're searching for a particular check. It will tell you, let's say 556, it'll tell you like, hey, that's the check, and that was the date. So you can just search for that way. So reports can always be helpful based on what you're actually looking for. Let's now go back. We've looked at revenue reports, expense, profit and loss, trial balance, balance sheets. I'll spend some time on HST and pro bono in seconds. Let's look at invoice balance, one of my favorite reports. So right here on the screen, we have invoice balance. You can just click on it, and you can download. Now, invoice balance for this particular account is going to take a few seconds to download, because, like, it looks at the 1,000 clients that we have and goes one by one and highlights things to you. While it does that, let me quickly show you the HST. HST report is very simple, like, or any taxes. It depends on which province you are. If you're in BC or, other provinces, you can do a GST and a PST report, and you can do a quick quarterly one and download. What it's going to tell you is it'll tell you the HST collected versus the HST that you paid. So that way you can quickly, in fact, we even have a video of how to take this report and fill your box 10, in your HST website, and then get and be done with your CRA requirements very quickly. Okay, so we kind of take, this is basically all the information that you need to fill in those boxes. It's there. And again, I strongly encourage you go to our YouTube channel, like as I told you, youtube.com/uLawPractice. And as you see here, we have webinars, and we have something called uLaw Answers, where you can actually get your answers from. Now, you don't have to actually go there. You can just click on uLaw Answers here, and you can search. Like, for example, I can say HST, right? And it'll show me all the videos. The one that I was exactly talking about is what are all the return boxes? How do I fill them? You can just look at it here, and it'll just click, and then remittance, how to do remittance. So you can use this Google search feature that we implemented under uLaw Answers, where you can give keywords, and then you can even give advanced keywords. You can say returns, right? And then it'll bring out all those ones that are related, to that. Okay, while I was talking, the invoice balance report has arrived. It's a great report because it tells you every client and what happened to him and how you stand. Like, for example, this client, John Bell, he owes you that money. But Janine, that one is really, you have a balance of 508, but guess what? You have $1,000 stressing in trust, and you forgot to transfer, right? It tells you every matter, who's the highest, who's the lowest, how much you can transfer. It even summarizes and tells you at the end of the day, how much money you can right now. I mean, in this, I know it's a fake account, but if this was real, this lawyer would be making $80,000 today. He would just get his assistant to just pay attention to this report and just download this money and get paid ASAP. That's why we brought this right front and center, right, of the report, so that you can kind of look at it. Okay. Now, as I was telling you, I showed you so many touch points, right? If you really look at this, I showed you so many reports and so many individual rows in these reports, right? And those are all summarized in our analytics section. So let's now move on to the final one, which is calendar reports, and then we'll talk about notifications. So calendar reports are right here. So the small dot, if you just click on that, under action, you will see now all these reports here. There's an employee revenue report, there's an employee by date range, there's timesheets, client summaries. There are so many reports here, that you can actually look at. I'm just going to look at a service time report. What that will do is it'll take, I think I just did it for a week. Let's see how it looks like. It'll say, hey, these are all the matters that you operated last week. The lawyers and legal counsels had that much time, assistants put in that much time, and it'll summarize. Now, obviously, it depends on the demo data, but you can see the power of it, especially if you're a multi firm where you have several people working together, this report can be very useful. Let's now jump into, a new analytical section that we've brought for uLaw, and that's pretty cool. It's under quick view. We have a report here called analytics. What I really like about this is, we have broken down this into all analytics, client analytics, matter analytics, accounting analytics. Now, these are very, you really need to drill down into these reports to see them. But what we have done is, I love this one, which is called the compliance analytics. What it does is it goes through your data and tells you where potentially you could have compliance issue. Okay, and so it tells you hey, the referrals are this much. That's a compliance information that the Law Society is actually looking for. It tells you the number of clients who are not categorized. Very important, right? So all the compliance issues, it'll start highlighting here, right? It also brings in like matter-related compliance, right? Like for example, like hey, this is really good. Like you all your matters are closed because the Law Society looks at how many matters have been active and you've not closed them. It tells you like, hey, you're doing a very good job in closing and archiving matters, right? So everything that a Law Society audit actually looks for in terms of contacts and matter, we brought it into the compliance report. We also have a beautiful report under contact. Like, it's another analytical report. It's a very, very pretty report. Like, I'm going to kind of put it up here. It's a pretty report. It tells you things like, how many clients you have and then divides them by 1 year, 6 months, and 90 days. That's your acquisition rate, right? Like, how well you're doing, how's your ghost clients. Clients that are not categorized, again, we bring it out in red. You need to kind of, pay attention. It also tells you like, hey, client referral is doing good, advertisement is doing good. What are some of the other categories that are doing really good? And also it brings you the birthdays of the month. Like, it tells you, hey, in October, Adam Brown is actually having, and he's 32 years. So, maybe you want to send him a birthday card. So it does all that stuff. Then it also does quality score. Like, it tells you like, hey, you're getting all these clients, but you're missing a lot of information on them, right? Like it tells you, like, for example, Tyler Tidman, you don't have a home address for him. There's no mailing address for him. It does all these analysis and tells you. So that way your quality of the data that you're maintaining in your system is very highly enriched. So that's under quick view under document generation analytics. Similarly, there's matter analytics. You can download that. And that one is also a similar one where it tells you on matter basis, like, how things went, like, so we explain what we do here. The beauty is here, like, it tells you how many matters, what's your acquisition, how many active, closed, archived, dormant. Dormant means like, you've not been billing, right? It tells you, how many, like, obviously there's a demo account, so we do a lot of billing, so it shows 0, but it'll be worth looking at your account, and then it gives you a report of invoice balance not collected. If you remember that other report that I downloaded, like, and then it sorts them by owings. It sorts them by pending trust transfer. It tells you, like, I mean, obviously there's a demo account, but it tells you how much money you can make now, right now, right? Like, so it's a great report. Again, very useful. It gives you a date when this report was actually generated on, because these are done using very powerful AI algorithms, right? Like, so what they do is we kind of take your data, process them, constantly, even when you are not using uLaw, your data is being processed and all these things are being pushed so that next time when we log in, these reports are available. We also have a funny thing called Amuse Me. So this is what it'll do is like, at the end of the day, you will see that, just on this account, for example, I'm just going to download all analytics just to show you how much analytics is there. But we pick like, top 30 funny reports, which we believe will be very helpful to you. And it's just randomly picked, which tells you some funny information. So it just amuses you and say, oh my God, like, I've done, the oldest matter, it's about 357 days. It's been dormant, and it tells you which matter it is, how much expenses you had in the month prior, how much you had. So it gives you a lot of these funny statistics, and that's why we called it Amuse Me, right? Like you might find something random that you never thought you knew. But just on this demo account, what I want to do is that's why I'm processing this report. It'll take some time. It'll tell you how much data points, we were able to collect. So 206 data points, the AI algorithm actually picked out for you that you can actually, amuse yourself. Like that's the power of, uLaw for you, where like, you've been giving this data. This is not something that, you kind of synthesize to, but we are able to take that and we are able to tell you so much about your matters, close rates, like, how your business is doing, what's happening with the matter flows, which is the oldest matter, what's the age. It just keeps going on and on and on and on, right? So that's the power of business reports that we are able to bring to you, via this software. Last and final is our new feature. It's called the notification feature, right? Like, because there are so many of these things that we are finding on a day-to-day basis. We brought it down with a small bell icon. I mean, you can choose to turn it off. Like you just click on it, it'll become red. Like, so you don't have to have notifications. But if you have it on, as you saw, like, it keeps popping up. It tells you like, hey, advertisement really did last month, right? Like, you didn't even go looking for that information, but uLaw, because it has now synthesized so much information for you, it slowly starts popping those informations, what the AI has been doing on a nightly basis. So that way you can take advantage of it. You can take, steps to it. So anything that you see as a notification, if you want to understand more detail, you would go under Quick View, under Document Generation Analytics, and you would download this. And that's exactly what, I just downloaded, right? Like, so it's basically this 203 information that it popped out last night that it's actually showing you in this far corner. Look at that. Like, it tells you now, like, hey, 33 is the total number of clients in this firm whose referral source is not categorized. It's putting you in red, basically because you need to take action. That is a law society requirement that you need to categorize in the last 180 days. So, it kind of gets you into this notion of telling you things that you might have not known, and you're not looking for, like, so 55 is the total number of matters that was closed in the firm, right? Like, in the last in that period. So it tells you useful information. That's what we try to achieve using notification. I think that kind of sums up, my presentation here. If there are questions, I'll be more than happy to answer, but you've been a great audience. Thanks for listening. And yeah, I'll wait for another 2-3 minutes. If there are questions, I can showcase them. I can walk you through. Otherwise, thank you and have a wonderful weekend. So I will post, if there are any questions, you can post it here. CPD hours. Oh, as it was very clear in the starting, this is a uLaw webinar. This one is not CPD. Now, what you should do is you should go on our webinar website, right, and look at the CPD. Like today was a business reporting. That was not a CPD one. But last week, we tell you how much CPD right there. Like last week was 1 hour. This one is not a CPD. Next week is 1 hour. The week after is again 1 hour. So we tell you which ones are CPD and which ones are not. How do you use the question mark? Hey, great question. Okay. So if you go to any matter, there'll be this icon right in front and center called question mark. And anytime you can just click on it. When you click on it, what it does is it analyzes that matter and in 1 second tells you what's the status of this matter. It tells you 7 invoices. You can reprint them right away, right? The second thing it tells you is it tells you all the trust ledgers, general ledgers, and the most important is here. It tells you that the client owes you that money. So if he paid you the money, you can just click on the payment and collect it right away. So that's question mark for you. Now, question mark also does analytics. You can bring it out as a report. So you can click on Insights. It will take the same data, synthesize for you. It might have quite a few. Let's see how many analytics it did for you. It did about 34 analytics for this matter. Like, it tells you, like, everything is invoiced. 7 is the total number of invoices. That's the amount that you've raised, how much you got paid so far, what's the balance, how many days you've not got paid, what's the number of days. Great question. But, question mark is right here to answer you that question. That was our thought process. So feel free, go to any matter where you have a suspicion and just hit the question mark. Like, I strongly encourage, like, just go to a random matter and hit the question mark. And in seconds, it'll tell you, like, hey, 1 invoice, that's what happened. Like, what's the amount in trust? Then you can hit, insights. You can hit ledgers. So if you click on ledgers, it'll immediately show you in ledgers, like, what happened in this matter. So, any other questions? If not, thank you so much. I think we've covered all the agenda that we wanted to cover, right? Like we talked about contact reports, matter reports, accounting reports. We talked how important reconciliation was. We talked about calendar reports, and then finally we talked about question mark 2. Thanks for reminding me, and we talked about that. Okay. Thank you, and we'll see you next week. It is CPD, and we'll take it from there.